So this might be news to some of you, but last year I was approached by the people at Professional Villains who made the ER Patient Typhon, which I reviewed back in 2021, and they later made a game called Anglerfish, a game that I'm in briefly as a sound clip. They asked me if I wanted to write a scenario for their next game. They were making an anthology sort of thing and provided me with a framework of what could be done. I agreed immediately. When presented with a choice of making something, I'll always choose to make something. The framework itself was that of a security guard in a hospital. All you can really do is walk around, aim your flashlight, and say hey at things to activate stuff. You have several floors and a security camera to check. Initially, I thought this was a very limiting framework. There's no inventory, no dialogue, no combat, just events and things you can loosely interact with. So I tried to think of something that would work inside those guidelines. I'd done a bit of map making for Doom and inadvertently made vague horror out of just dark rooms and noises, so I decided to go along with that. Running and hiding from monsters was something that I didn't really think about. Whilst walking home from work one day, I decided the most appropriate route was going to be along the lines of Japanese horror. More of a series of unsettling, unexplained weird events than combat encounters. The devs said they could draw monsters for me, but trying to think of an entity that could be considered scary is so subjective that I decided it wasn't really worth it, and I didn't want to make too much work for the developers either. I've always been of the opinion that monsters are only as good as the mechanics that can go along with them, and from what I'd seen of the game, anything I could come up with would either be weak, since you can defeat it or stop enemies by saying hey to them, or if you couldn't stop them, then they'd just be overpowered, and I figured that wouldn't be very much fun. One of the main inspirations was Silent Hill 3's Mirror Room. There was no need to present a monster, just trap the player in a room with something they can't quite quantify. The Silent Hill 3 Mirror Room, in case you don't know, is a short section of the game where a protagonist Heather goes into a room and finds a big mirror. The door is locked behind her and black vines start growing on the other side of the mirror. This keeps on getting more concerning until the door finally opens and you can leave. Why I think this is so good is because it's so weird and unnatural for sure, but it also removes control of the situation from the player entirely. You can't hurt the black veins and you can't run away from them. You don't even know what's happening, you just want to leave. The goal was to take inspiration from that idea, lock the player in a room with a shadow that can slowly and menacingly move towards them. It doesn't stop when they shout at it, and if they try to run away, they can't. And when it's about to touch them, it would vanish, the door would unlock, and they're free to go. Hopefully traumatized. This was supposed to be the main part of the little scenario. The rest of the story was supposed to be suspense building, with the ideas coming partly from the film Pulse, which has a lot of great moments in it, but the thing I found the creepiest were the black stains on the walls. When someone dies in the film, it leaves a black stain where they were, and there's something that I find inexplicably unsettling about it, and decided that the idea would work well with the camera. You can see floating shadows on the security camera, but when you get to the location, it's just a weird black stain on the floor. The entire thing was based on the idea that the security guard would drink bad coffee and start to hallucinate, which is more of an afterthought to justify the events to begin with. I'm not going to read out the entire prompt of what I wrote for them. We spoke it over and they said that a locked door might not work with the game engine design, and I was pretty concerned that my entire story would fall through based on that, but I decided to leave them to it and hope that it turned out okay. They've made horror games in the past and I just trusted them to make something of what I wrote. I had almost no input with the game after that. Almost an entire year passed. I got on with the channel and they got on with the rest of their game. If you didn't know, I also voiced some lines in a prologue by the game and read out some condensed versions of scripts that I've done on the channel before, but besides that, it had been pretty quiet. A day or so ago, just after the game had been released, I decided to finally play it. I've been pretty busy. After going through Manly Badass Hero story, which was really great, I got to my own and was surprised that for a story I had written, I was lost with what was going on. After some walking around, I found the coffee machine and the story started. There were some shadows on the camera, and going to check them resulted in the black stains I'd asked for, but when I got to what I thought was the locked room, I just found some flickering lights and was honestly unsettled because I didn't know what was going to happen from here on out.
hey, 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 hey.
I kept hearing the sound of something moving towards me, and then there was never anything there, and this was disconcerting in its own way. Moving from floor to floor, the sound continued, and I wasn't sure if something had gone wrong, but still just didn't like what was happening because I didn't understand if it was coming to get me or not, and it was legitimately frightening. The story wrapped up with more of the shadows appearing on the camera, with multiple stains on the floor, until you jump into a coffee cup at the end, which signals the end of the story, because I didn't really write an end to the story, and this is what the dev suggested. I walked away from my own story disappointed that I didn't get exactly what I wanted, but also pleased that it still managed to scare me, and I'm the one who technically wrote it. I expected to not find any of it frightening since I thought I knew exactly what was going to happen. And this made me realize that a lot of the games I review are the same. Some things are just happy accidents, and creating something to the vision that you have in your mind is sometimes just not possible, or an unforeseen factor drastically improves the idea that you had to begin with. I'm not going to say that my idea was better than what I got or vice versa, it was impressive regardless, and maybe if I had got exactly what I wanted, it might not have worked as well. Intention is something you can't always know as a reviewer. Anyway, this is just something that I wanted to share with you. If you want to check out the free prologue and listen to me yap on again in a different place, there'll be links in the description to the free prologue and the full game. Thanks for watching.